How many dogs could you trust off-leash? And what would you think if you saw someone walking 4 German shepherds, all untethered, weaving through morning traffic as if they owned the town? For the people of Willow Glen, a picturesque little Massachusetts community where everyone seemed to know everyone else's business, it was an unforgettable sight. The day started quietly, with the scent of coffee drifting from the bakery, delivery vans rattling by, and early risers bundled against the crisp spring air. That's when Alexis Reed appeared at the corner of Main and Maple, her stride calm and certain, trailed by 4 massive German shepherds: Griffin, Harmony, Jenna, and Priscilla. No leashes, not even a treat bag or a clicker in sight. Just Alexis, her hands tucked in the pockets of her worn windbreaker, head held high, eyes forward, a soft word or glance now and then guiding her dogs. Griffin, the oldest and broadest, walked just behind her left heel, while Harmony, a slender female with intelligent eyes, stayed to her right. Jenna, with her youthful bounce, and Priscilla, dignified and gray-muzzled, followed as if this silent formation was as natural as breathing. A few people at the corner cafe nearly dropped their mugs. Someone nudged a friend, whispering, "Isn't that dangerous?" A jogger, slowing to a stop, watched with a mix of awe and unease. The morning regulars at the hardware store pressed their faces to the window. For a moment, everyone seemed to be holding their breath, half expecting chaos. A bark, a sudden lunge, a dog darting into the road. But Alexis and her pack moved as one, pausing at intersections, waiting for her word. Traffic stopped, not from necessity but out of pure, disbelieving curiosity. It didn't take long for someone to pull out a phone and start filming. In a world obsessed with control, rules for children, rules for pets, rules for everything, here was a woman walking through town with 4 dogs that could, by all rights, have scattered in every direction. But they didn't. They moved with purpose and pride, never straying more than a foot from her side, tongues lolling, tails swaying like banners. At the bakery, a young boy tugged on his mother's sleeve, pointing in wonder. Alexis smiled, gave the boy a gentle nod, and paused. "Sit," she murmured. 4 shepherds settled instantly onto the sidewalk. People watched, some grinning, others suspicious. The baker, old Mr. Russo, stepped out with a bag of day-old rolls. "For the dogs, Miss Reed?" he called, half joking, half impressed. Alexis shook her head. "Thanks, Mr. Russo, but they've already had breakfast." The exchange was simple, but the message was clear. This was her routine. She didn't need to bribe her dogs for obedience. There was something else holding them together, something invisible but powerful. Still, as Alexis and her pack continued through the square, not everyone saw it as a marvel. Some saw a threat. Nancy Myers, a retired teacher with a talent for raising her voice just when gossip needed wings, stared from her porch. She frowned, her phone raised, recording every move. "It's irresponsible," she declared to no one in particular. "One slip, and someone's going to get hurt." Down the street, a young couple exchanged nervous glances as they pulled their little spaniel closer. "What if those shepherds turn?" the man whispered. "They're so big." But Alexis kept moving, her focus unbroken. In truth, she felt the stares, the judgment pressing in like static. But she'd learned long ago not to let other people's fear dictate her life. She'd grown up in foster homes, always the outsider, always the one others expected to snap or fall apart. Dogs had saved her, taught her patience, resilience, and above all, the difference between real trust and obedience rooted in fear. She turned onto a side street, the morning sun throwing long shadows ahead. Jenna yawned, then pressed closer, nudging Alexis's leg with her nose. "Easy, girl. Alexis whispered, offering a scratch behind the ear. Even as she walked with confidence, her heart carried a knot of tension. It wasn't the dogs she worried about. It was people. People who didn't understand what they saw. People who were quick to judge, slow to listen. Behind her, Nancy was already making a note on her phone, the seed of a rumor taking root. A teenage boy filmed a video and posted it to social media. Crazy dog lady walks 4 wolves through town. No leashes. Someone call animal control. Within minutes, the footage began spreading, comments multiplying, some admiring, most alarmed. As Alexis rounded the corner by the library, she caught sight of her friend Will Carter, broad-shouldered, easygoing, and one of the few in town who never flinched at her unconventional ways. He waved. "Morning, Alexis. Looking good, crew." Griffin gave a soft woof in reply, tail wagging. For a moment, the knot in Alexis's chest loosened. Not everyone saw danger. Some saw strength, beauty, even hope. Yet, as the pack crossed the last intersection, a police cruiser slowed beside them, windows down. Officer Green, young and fresh-faced, leaned out. "Everything all right here, Miss Reed?" His tone was polite, but Alexis heard the edge beneath it. "All good, officer. Just our daily walk." She met his gaze without flinching, willing herself to stay calm. Green nodded, uncertain. "Just be careful, okay?" "We always are," Alexis replied. As the cruiser pulled away, Alexis felt eyes on her from all sides. Admiration had turned to suspicion in a heartbeat. And in a small town, that was all it took for rumors to start spreading. Still, as she reached her block and the shepherds trotted at her side, 4 proud, steady hearts beating in sync with hers, Alexis held her head high. In a world that demanded leashes, she chose trust. But she could already sense the trouble brewing, the whispers swelling into something larger. This was just the beginning. Rumors, like dandelion seeds, drift on the lightest wind and root themselves wherever there's fertile ground for doubt. By the end of that same day, the story of Alexis Reed and her 4 off-leash German shepherds had grown, twisted, and taken on a life of its own in Willow Glen. It started on the Willow Glen Neighbors Facebook page, a blurry video, Alexis's steady stride, her dogs perfectly in step, no leashes in sight. Some viewers posted hearts and clapping emojis, calling her a real-life dog whisperer. But others weren't so sure. Is this safe? Is she training attack dogs? What if those shepherds turn on a child? In the heart of it all was Nancy Myers. Nancy, who spent her retirement organizing bake sales, writing letters to the editor, and making sure the local rules were followed to the letter, watched the video over and over. She zoomed in on the dogs' powerful shoulders, their alert, attentive faces. Something in it unsettled her. Maybe how calm Alexis seemed. Maybe how the dogs never broke formation. "That's not normal," she told her husband, handing him her phone. "Nobody's that in control, not without something." By dinner time, Nancy was messaging her circle. "We need to look out for the kids. This woman has no business walking those beasts off leash." Her words carried weight. Soon her book club friends were forwarding the video to their families. Within hours, the shepherd lady became a topic at the grocery store, in the school pickup line, and in whispers at the post office. People remembered other moments. Alexis at the park, her dogs sitting like statues while toddlers shrieked and ran by. Alexis giving a quiet command, and the entire pack dropping to their bellies. For some, it was proof of her skill. For others, it felt unnatural, unsettling. As twilight fell, someone in the neighborhood took things further. A post appeared. "Anyone else worried about the shepherds on Main? Should we call animal control before something happens?" Replies came fast, some in support, some defending Alexis. But the tide was shifting. Someone dug up an old news article about a dog attack in another town, attaching it as evidence of what could go wrong. Alexis, meanwhile, had no idea how fast the narrative was changing. After her walk, she'd gone home to her small blue house on Elm Street, a cozy space cluttered with chew toys, dog beds, and fading photos from her foster childhood. She fed the dogs, checked their paws for burrs, and settled in with a cup of tea, grateful for a peaceful evening. The shepherds, Griffin, Harmony, Jenna, and Priscilla, draped themselves around her, their breathing slow and deep, their eyes never far from her own. For Alexis, these dogs weren't just companions. They were her lifeline, her chosen family. She scrolled through her phone absently, pausing when a notification pinged. Her heart skipped as she saw the video. Her, the dogs, Main Street. She watched the comments roll in, her fingers tightening on the mug. Is this legal? Someone needs to step in before it's too late. Others posted, she's an amazing trainer. My kids love watching her walk by. But it was the suspicion that echoed loudest. Alexis felt it like a chill creeping through the cracks in her walls. Then, just after 9, her phone rang. Will Carter's name lit up the screen. She answered on the second ring, trying to keep her voice steady. Hey Will, you see the circus online? Will sighed. Yeah, I did. Some folks are losing their minds, Lex. Nancy Myers started a petition, wants animal control to check on you. Alexis closed her eyes, dread prickling her skin. She thinks I'm abusing the dogs? She says you must be using shock collars, or something worse. I told her that's ridiculous, but she wouldn't listen. Will's voice lowered. You know how this town gets when it smells a scandal. Alexis tried to laugh, but it caught in her throat. I just walk my dogs, Will. I don't hurt them. I know, but some people don't want to understand. They'd rather be scared. Will hesitated. I'm outside your house, by the way. Figured you might want company. Relief washed over Alexis, and she unlocked the front door. Will came in, brushing the dogs' heads, dropping onto the sofa beside her. You okay? I will be, Alexis lied. She stared at the comments on her phone. It's just noise. People gossip. It'll blow over. But it didn't. The next morning, she noticed a silver sedan idling across the street, a figure watching her front door through tinted glass. Later, while gardening in the yard, she caught a neighbor snapping photos, ducking behind a hedge when Alexis looked up. That afternoon, Animal Control left a message on her voicemail. We'd like to speak with you about your dogs. Please call us back at your earliest convenience. Inside, the shepherds picked up on her unease. Griffin leaned into her side, his massive head resting on her knee. Harmony circled the living room, whining softly, unable to settle. Jenna and Priscilla sat by the window, watching every car that passed, their ears flicking with every unfamiliar noise. Alexis felt her world shrinking, the safe bubble she'd built with her dogs suddenly fragile. She double-checked every latch on the gates, scanned her yard for anything someone could twist into evidence. Every bark outside made her jump. By evening, she pulled the curtains tight and sat with the dogs in the darkness, her mind racing. Would someone try to poison her dogs? Would Animal Control show up with a warrant? Would they take her pack away? That night, a stranger posted a photo of her house on Facebook with the caption, "If anything happens, remember this address." The cruelty stunned Alexis. How quickly a community could turn on its own. The world outside her window felt hostile. Inside, surrounded by the steady presence of her dogs and the familiar tick of the clock, Alexis promised herself she would not back down. She would protect her pack, no matter what came next. But as she lay in bed, The rumors and suspicion swirled through her dreams. In Willow Glen, trust was earned slowly and lost in a heartbeat. And tonight, Alexis Reed felt the weight of every suspicious eye. Alexis barely slept. Each time she closed her eyes, nightmares clawed their way into her mind. Her dogs yanked from her arms, cold metal cages slamming shut, neighbors shouting as the shepherds were led away in chains. In the half-light before dawn, she stared at the ceiling, the room thick with the quiet breathing of her pack. Jenna was curled at her feet, Harmony sprawled across the threshold, Griffin and Priscilla sharing the old leather chair by the window. It should have been comforting. Instead, the silence felt like a warning. By morning, the world seemed smaller. Alexis hesitated at her own front door, peering through the narrow gap between curtains. The silver sedan was back, parked 2 doors down. Nancy Myers was already out walking her Shih Tzu, deliberately pausing to glare at Alexis's house, her phone clutched in one hand like a weapon. Even the mailman gave her a tight, wary nod, as if he too was weighing every step. Will Carter stopped by before work, carrying 2 coffees and a box of donuts. He knocked softly, mindful of the tension coiled just beneath the surface. Alexis let him in, barely managing a smile. "You look like hell," Will said gently, setting the coffee down. "I feel worse," Alexis admitted, rubbing her temples. "It's like everyone's waiting for me to screw up, or worse, hoping I do." Will tried to reassure her, but his words felt thin against the drumbeat of anxiety pounding in her chest. "It'll pass, Lex. People love a little drama, but it blows over." She shook her head. "Not this time. Nancy's out for blood. And now animal control wants to talk. If they take my dogs—" Her voice broke and she looked away, embarrassed by the tears burning in her eyes. Will squeezed her shoulder. "They won't. You haven't done anything wrong." But Alexis knew better. Life had taught her that being innocent didn't always protect you. As a foster kid, she'd learned to read warning signs, cold stares, whispered conversations, the way grown-ups turned on a dime when the world needed a scapegoat. She'd moved through a dozen homes before she turned 18, each one teaching her that trust was a fragile, conditional thing. She drifted through her chores that morning, feeding the dogs, checking the yard for anything out of place, cleaning up the kitchen with hands that trembled just a little. The shepherds watched her every move. Griffin, sensing her tension, nudged her leg and let out a quiet whine. Alexis crouched, burying her face in his thick fur, breathing in the smell of earth and sunshine. "You guys are all I've got," she whispered. "We stick together, no matter what." By midday, the pressure in town was building. On social media, the debate had escalated from concern to accusation. Someone dredged up a story from Alexis's past. A mention of her years in foster care spun into dark speculation. "She's not stable," one comment read. "People like that shouldn't have dogs, let alone 4 shepherds." Alexis tried to ignore it, but the words found their way in. She stared at her phone, heart pounding, until Harmony nudged it out of her hands. The dog looked up at her, expectant, tail thumping softly. "Walk?" Alexis managed a weak smile. "You think a walk will help?" The thought of being out in public made her stomach knot, but the dogs needed their routine. She leashed Harmony and Jenna, leaving Griffin and Priscilla to watch the house, and headed for the woods at the edge of town. The familiar path wound through tall pines and old stone walls, the air cool and moss-scented. For a while, the trees closed out the rest of the world, and Alexis let herself breathe. But halfway through their walk, she heard voices. 2 teens, phone cameras at the ready, stood at the trailhead, whispering and pointing. Alexis kept her head down, hurrying past, but their laughter followed her. That night, another video appeared online, this time of Alexis moving quickly, her face pinched with worry, her hands gripping the leashes too tightly. "Look at her, hiding in the woods," someone wrote. "She knows she's guilty." The walls were closing in. At home, Alexis tried to focus on the dogs, training drills, gentle games, brushing out their coats. But she was jumpy, irritable, her movements clipped and hurried. Even the shepherds felt it. Griffin, usually calm as stone, paced the living room. Jenna flinched at sudden noises. Harmony refused her dinner, eyes wide and watchful. That night, Alexis called Will again. She didn't bother to pretend she was fine. "It's getting worse," she said quietly. "They're watching the house, taking pictures. Someone threw garbage over my fence today, said it was for the animals. I'm afraid to leave them alone, Will." Will's voice was tight with anger. "This is harassment, Lex. You should call the police." "And say what?" Alexis shook her head, wiping at her eyes. "That I'm being bullied by a retired teacher and a pack of gossips? They'd just say I brought it on myself." Will was silent for a long moment. "You know, you always said the dogs were your family. Maybe it's time to let them help you." Alexis managed to laugh, dry, brittle, but real. "They already do. They're the only ones who never judge me." Later, as the house finally settled into silence, Alexis lay on the living room floor, surrounded by her shepherds. She stared up at the ceiling, replaying the words she'd heard, the comments she'd read, the suspicion in every sideways glance. The fear wasn't just for herself, but for her pack, for the only family that had ever truly belonged to her. She remembered her worst foster home, a place where the adults smiled for the social worker but snapped when the doors closed. She'd survived by keeping her head down, by being invisible. But now, with 4 German shepherds at her side, invisibility wasn't an option. Alexis pressed her face into Griffin's fur, let the tears fall, and vowed, whatever happened, she would protect them. The world outside was closing in, but inside these 4 walls, there was still trust, still love, still hope, and tomorrow she would face the world again. The next morning dawned gray and uncertain, rain streaking down the windows in thin, wavering lines. Alexis stood in her kitchen, stirring oatmeal, listening to the heavy silence. Outside, the town seemed muted. She'd hoped the drama would fade, that people would move on to the next small-town scandal. Instead, she sensed the scrutiny tightening, felt every curtain twitch, every stare linger a little too long. She tried to move through her routine, voice steady, commands gentle, determined to shield her dogs from her rising anxiety. "Sit," she said softly, and Griffin's broad frame lowered immediately. Harmony, ever attentive, nudged Priscilla aside to claim her usual spot beside Alexis's feet. Jenna whined and rolled onto her back, angling for a belly rub. Alexis smiled despite herself. For a few minutes, the simple, familiar rhythm of feeding and grooming calmed her nerves. The shepherds were her anchor, unconditional, always ready to forgive, always eager to please. But the world outside her door was anything but forgiving. A knock startled her mid-breakfast. She tensed, heart racing, but it was only Will, holding out an umbrella and a brown paper bag. "Thought you could use some actual food," he said, forcing a crooked grin. Alexis took it gratefully, the warmth of the bag and her friend's stubborn loyalty giving her strength. "Will," she said quietly, "I don't know how much longer I can do this. It feels like everyone is waiting for me to slip, like the town is holding its breath, just hoping I'll fail." He frowned. "They're scared, Lex. People fear what they don't understand. But you've made it this far. Don't let a handful of gossips decide who you are. She nodded, trying to believe it, but the words felt heavy. She'd survived worse, yes. She'd survived loneliness, rejection, years of bouncing from house to house. Each new start just another reminder that trust could be broken in a moment. But this, the slow drip of suspicion and slander, felt almost worse. There was no single blow to brace for, only 1,000 paper cuts. That afternoon, as the rain tapered off, Alexis heard a hesitant knock at her door. She opened it to find a thin, shy girl she'd seen around town, maybe 13, 14, clutching a leash with trembling hands. At the end of it was a scrawny, trembling mutt with sad eyes and patches of missing fur. "Hi," the girl whispered, avoiding Alexis's gaze. "My name's Emily. I saw you at the park with your dogs. My mom says I shouldn't bother you, but I didn't know who else to ask." Alexis crouched down, her voice gentle. "You're not bothering me, Emily. What's your dog's name?" "Shadow. He's scared of everything. He won't let anyone touch him but me. We got him from the shelter a few months ago, but he just hides under my bed. I saw how your dogs listened to you. I thought, maybe you could help." Alexis's heart softened. In Emily's worried eyes, she recognized something of her younger self, a kid hungry for connection, desperate for something to trust. "Of course I'll help," she said, her own voice trembling a little. "Let's go slow, okay? With dogs, trust takes time." Emily nodded, biting her lip. Alexis knelt in the driveway, moving slowly, letting Shadow sniff her outstretched hand. The little dog flinched, then inched closer, trembling but curious. Alexis whispered encouragement, her voice low and soothing. "You're okay, buddy. No one's gonna hurt you." For the next hour, Alexis guided Emily through the basics. No harsh commands, no sudden movements, just patience, gentle praise, and small victories. She watched as Emily relaxed, her posture loosening, her smile tentative but real. When Shadow finally accepted a treat from Alexis's palm, Emily's eyes went wide with disbelief. "He's never done that before," Emily gasped. "He always hides." Alexis smiled. "Sometimes it just takes a little patience and someone willing to listen." As the lesson ended, Emily lingered. "How did you learn all this? Were you always good with dogs?" Alexis hesitated, the old scars of childhood surfacing. But there was something in Emily's openness that made her want to share. "No," she said. "I learned the hard way. I grew up moving from house to house, never knowing if I'd get to stay, never knowing who to trust. Dogs, they were always honest with me. They don't judge. They don't care if you're broken. They just want to know you'll be there tomorrow." Emily nodded slowly, understanding in her gaze. "That's how I feel with Shadow. I think he's scared I'll leave." "Then show him you won't," Alexis said softly. "Every day, every chance you get. Trust isn't built overnight. It's built in the little things, in waiting, in listening, in being kind when it's hard." For Alexis, the act of teaching was a balm, a reminder that the slow work of trust mattered, that even in the face of suspicion and loneliness, there were still ways to reach across the gap. As Emily and Shadow left, Alexis watched them go, her heart lighter. Maybe, she thought, this was how belonging started, not with grand gestures, but with small, steady acts of faith. That night, Alexis sat with her dogs on the back porch, watching rain clouds drift across the fading light. She thought of Emily, of Shadow, of every scared kid and trembling dog who just wanted a place to be safe. The shepherds pressed close, their presence warm and grounding. For the first time in days, Alexis allowed herself a glimmer of hope. Maybe, just maybe, trust could grow again, even here, even now. And as the world outside her door rumbled with doubt, inside, a seed of belonging began to take root. Alexis was woken before dawn by the sharp, insistent ring of her doorbell. Her heart jumped, pulse pounding in her ears as the dogs scrambled up, barking and crowding toward the front hallway. Griffin's deep voice boomed through the door, Harmony and Jenna flanking him, while Priscilla lingered back, alert but silent. Alexis's mind spun through every possibility. Had something happened? Was someone hurt? Or was this the moment she'd been dreading, when rumor and suspicion became something official, something she couldn't ignore? She slipped on her shoes and tried to steady her voice. "Quiet, guys. It's okay. Stay." The shepherds obeyed, hovering at her sides as she opened the door to a cluster of figures standing on her porch. 2 animal control officers in dark uniforms, a uniformed police officer, Officer Green, and surprisingly, Dr. Ben Wallace, the local animal behaviorist, whose calm expression was a small comfort. Behind them, neighbors gathered at the curb, their faces tense, phones out, murmurs rippling like static. Nancy Myers stood front and center, arms folded, lips pursed in triumph. She met Alexis's gaze and looked away, already dialing her phone. Alexis drew a deep breath, heart pounding in her chest. "Miss Reed," said the lead animal control officer, voice neutral but practiced. "We've received several complaints about your dogs and would like to conduct an inspection. Is that all right?" Alexis nodded. "Of course, please come in." She stepped aside, trying to keep her posture calm, her tone steady. The shepherds clustered around her, eyes wary but trusting. She looked at them, her silent promise echoing, "I won't let anything happen to you." As the officers entered, Dr. Wallace offered a small nod. "Morning, Alexis. We just want to make sure everything is safe and above board. No one's here to cause trouble." Alexis forced a smile, but her hands shook. The police officer lingered at the doorway, casting an eye over the small, neat living room. Faded photos on the wall, dog beds lined up beneath the window, toys scattered across the rug. One of the animal control officers, a woman with a gentle manner, knelt to greet Griffin, offering her hand. He sniffed, then sat quietly, tail brushing the floor. "We just want to observe your dogs and check your living conditions, Miss Reed. You understand, given the public concern." Alexis nodded. "Of course, please. Anything you need to see." The officers moved methodically through her home, making notes, peeking into the tidy kitchen, the back porch with its boxes of toys and bins of food. They checked vaccination records, tags, and licensing paperwork, which Alexis had meticulously organized in a battered blue folder. Meanwhile, Dr. Wallace watched the shepherds, observing how they responded to strangers, how they moved together and returned to Alexis for reassurance. "Your dogs seem very well socialized," he remarked, watching as Harmony offered her paw and Jenna nuzzled Priscilla. "They're calm under pressure. That says a lot about your relationship." Alexis felt a rush of pride, but the tension didn't leave her chest. "They're my family," she said quietly. "I'd do anything for them." Outside, the neighborhood had become a scene, a knot of bystanders growing larger as word spread. Some watched with concern, others with open curiosity. Nancy paced back and forth, speaking loudly into her phone, reciting the accusations she'd repeated all week. She must be using something. Dogs don't behave that way unless they're scared or hurt. The officers made their way into the backyard, where Griffin and Jenna ran circles in the grass, tongues lolling. The animal control woman crouched to examine their coats, then checked the food and water bowls, the secure fencing, the stack of medical supplies stored in a weatherproof bin. "Everything here is clean and well kept," she told the others. "No signs of neglect or abuse. These dogs are clearly loved." Still, the tension outside grew. A few people filmed from the sidewalk, their voices carrying, "What's going on? Did they find something?" A child tugged at her mother's sleeve, whispering, "Are the dogs in trouble, Mom?" Nancy's voice rose above the murmur. "She must be hiding something. They're too perfect. Dogs don't just listen like that for no reason." Inside, Dr. Wallace quietly asked Alexis about her training methods. "No shock collars, no prong collars, nothing like that?" he inquired. Alexis shook her head. "Just patience. Consistency. I learned from experience. Fear doesn't build trust." He watched as Harmony, sensing Alexis's distress, leaned against her leg and gazed up, eyes full of concern. Dr. Wallace jotted a note, nodding slowly. "It's impressive," he said, voice low. "Not many people can do what you do." The animal control officers finished their inspection, exchanging a glance. The lead officer turned to Alexis, voice firm but fair. "Miss Reed, everything appears to be in order. Your dogs are healthy, your paperwork's impeccable, and there's no evidence of mistreatment. We'll file our report with the town." Relief flooded Alexis, so strong her knees nearly buckled. "Thank you," she whispered, tears pricking at the corners of her eyes. But outside, the verdict was less clear. Nancy stormed forward as the officers stepped onto the porch. "What about her training methods? How can you be sure she isn't hiding something? Are you just going to take her word for it?" The lead officer met her gaze calmly. "We found no evidence of abuse or neglect, Miss Myers. Miss Reed's dogs are happy and healthy." Nancy's voice sharpened. "You're making a mistake. She's got everyone fooled. Just wait, you'll see." Alexis watched as the officials departed, the crowd dispersing in small groups, some disappointed, some relieved. Dr. Wallace lingered, offering Alexis a handshake. "If you're ever open to it, I'd like to learn more about your approach. It's not often you see dogs this well adjusted." Alexis nodded, grateful but exhausted. The shepherds pressed close, sensing her need for reassurance. She watched the last of the neighbors drift away, Nancy still muttering, her phone pressed to her ear. Inside, Alexis finally let herself cry, surrounded by her loyal pack. She was cleared, for now, but she knew the storm was far from over. In Willow Glen, suspicion didn't die easily, but Alexis had survived worse. And as she looked at Griffin, Harmony, Jenna, and Priscilla, she drew strength from the one truth no rumor could touch. Trust, once earned, was a bond that couldn't be broken. Officially, the verdict was in. The Animal Control Officer's report, posted to the town website that very afternoon, was clear and direct. No evidence of abuse, neglect, or unlawful restraint. Dogs in excellent health and well cared for. Dr. Ben Wallace wrote a brief letter of support, noting Alexis's remarkable training methods and the positive, trusting bond between her and her dogs. The local police signed off with no further comment. On paper, Alexis was vindicated. But in the age of whispers and screens, a clean bill of health wasn't enough. That evening, as the last light faded from the sky, Alexis sat on her back steps, listening to the uneasy silence that had settled over Elm Street. The shepherds lounged at her feet, noses twitching at the breeze, unaware of the human drama swirling around them. For the first time in days, Alexis let herself exhale, just a little. The next morning, she awoke to a different kind of tension. Her phone was alive with notifications, some private messages apologizing for doubting her, others tinged with grudging admiration. Sorry we jumped to conclusions. Didn't realize how much work went into your training. Respect. But there were just as many comments that stung. Guess they didn't look hard enough. Those dogs are unnatural. I still don't buy it. The internet didn't care about facts. It cared about fear. Alexis tried to focus on the good. Emily's mother stopped by in person, a bag of fresh scones in hand, gratitude written across her face. Emily hasn't stopped talking about you. Shadows coming out from under the bed now. You've given my daughter confidence I haven't seen in years. Thank you, Alexis. They embraced awkwardly. Alexis caught off guard by the warmth and relief in the gesture. For a moment, she remembered why she endured the scrutiny. Because making a difference, even for one child and one dog, was worth it. But the shadow of suspicion lingered. When Alexis walked the shepherds through town, people stared just as hard as before. Some smiled. Others crossed the street. Kids pointed and whispered. In the grocery store, an elderly man stopped her in the cereal aisle. "Don't let him get you down, kid," he said gruffly. "Town needs more folks who know how to listen, to animals and to people." His kindness made Alexis's eyes sting. That afternoon, Dr. Wallace returned, this time alone and off duty. He carried a small notepad and a look of genuine curiosity. "I want to learn more about what you do, Alexis. The official report's one thing, but I want to see how you build trust with these dogs. You're onto something most people don't understand." Alexis was hesitant at first. She'd spent so long defending herself that she forgot what it felt like to simply share her passion. But as she led Dr. Wallace through her daily routines, demonstrating patience, repetition, and the subtle, silent cues she'd developed with her dogs, she relaxed. Griffin responded to a gesture, Harmony to a whisper. Jenna and Priscilla seemed to anticipate her every move. Dr. Wallace took careful notes, nodding with increasing respect. "You don't force them," he observed quietly. "You invite them. It's partnership, not domination." Alexis smiled, a genuine warmth returning to her voice. "That's all trust is, isn't it? Letting someone choose you, again and again." As the days passed, Alexis felt both exhausted and exposed. The storm hadn't passed so much as shifted. Her name still popped up on message boards and Facebook threads, but the tone was changing, slowly, uncertainly. The first tentative apologies were followed by offers of coffee or requests for advice. A few former critics brought their own dogs for help, curiosity outweighing their pride. Still, Alexis never let her guard down. At night, she double-checked the locks and watched the shadows creep across her living room walls. Emily visited more often, shadow in tow. With Alexis's patient coaching, Emily learned to read her dog's body language, to reward the smallest act of bravery. Each breakthrough, Shadow sniffing a stranger's hand, trotting boldly around the block, falling asleep in a sunbeam, felt like a small miracle. For Alexis, watching Emily bloom was healing. It was proof that trust, even battered and bruised, could grow back stronger than before. But some wounds lingered. Nancy Myers, undeterred by the official clearance, doubled down online, posting lengthy diatribes about dangerous dogs and irresponsible owners. She dredged up every rumor, each new story less accurate than the last. Her influence had faded, but not disappeared. Alexis still caught glimpses of suspicion in the eyes of some neighbors, still felt the cold weight of judgment pressing in. One afternoon, a group of teens passed by her house, one shouting, "Hey, dog lady, your wolves bite!" Alexis forced a smile, shaking her head. "Only if you're made of bacon," she called back, earning a round of nervous laughter. The shepherds watched silently, unfazed. That night, after the last apology message had pinged her phone, Alexis sat with Will on the porch, sharing the silence. "I thought this would feel better," she admitted. "I thought being cleared would mean I could breathe again." Will nodded, tossing a stick for Jenna. "Sometimes it takes a while for the world to catch up to the truth. People see what they want to see." Alexis leaned into the darkness, her dogs pressed close, her heart heavy but determined. "I just want to live my life, Will. I just want to help people. Help dogs." "You are," Will replied, "even when they don't know it yet." And as the moon rose over Willow Glen, Alexis understood something deep and difficult. Vindication on paper was not the same as acceptance in people's hearts. But she was still here, still standing, still surrounded by love and loyalty that could not be shaken by rumor or fear. Tomorrow, she promised herself, she would keep walking, and maybe in time, the town would learn to walk with her. A week after the investigation, Alexis realized that waiting for suspicion to vanish on its own was like waiting for fog to lift without the sun. It just wasn't going to happen. The town's gossip, though quieter now, still clung to her like a stubborn shadow. Every step she took with her shepherds down Main Street felt watched, measured, dissected. Even the kids at the park, who once rushed up to pet her dogs, now lingered at a cautious distance, their parents looking on with folded arms. One rainy Thursday, Alexis stood at the kitchen window, watching water bead and race down the glass. The dogs pressed close, as if they too felt her restlessness. Alexis remembered something an old social worker once told her: sometimes the only way out is through. She closed her eyes, drew a deep breath, and decided she wouldn't hide anymore. The next morning, Alexis drafted a message and posted it to the Willow Glen Neighbors group. "I'd like to invite anyone who's interested to a free workshop at Willow Glen Park this Saturday. I'll be sharing my story and some of the methods I use to train and connect with my dogs. Bring your questions, your doubts, and if you'd like, your own dogs. Everyone is welcome." She hit send, nerves jangling. Instantly, notifications lit up. Some replies were supportive, others skeptical or openly hostile. "Why should we trust you? Is this a PR stunt? I want to see for myself." But she ignored the barbs. She had nothing left to lose. Will called that night, voice full of concern and pride. "You sure about this?" he asked. "You're putting yourself out there for the whole town to judge again." "I'm tired of hiding, Will. If people are going to talk, let them talk to my face. Maybe if they see what trust really looks like, it'll make a difference." Saturday dawned cold and bright. The kind of day when the air snaps against your skin and sunlight turns every puddle to silver. Alexis arrived early at the park, her shepherds walking close at her heels, tails wagging. Will helped set up a folding table with coffee, water bowls, and a sign: "Pack heart, trust, leadership, and the power of second chances." Emily and her mom arrived soon after, with Shadow, no longer trembling, but prancing with uncertain excitement. A few other families trickled in, then more, drawn by curiosity or controversy, or maybe something in between. By noon, over 40 people had gathered: neighbors, parents, kids, skeptics, dog owners, and even a few teens who'd once mocked Alexis from afar. Some held their phones, ready to record. Others brought their dogs, all shapes and sizes straining at leashes. Alexis's heart thudded, but she stood tall, the shepherd sitting calmly at her side. She started with her story, not just the facts of her training, but the heart of it. The loneliness of foster care, the ache of never belonging, and the way a rescued dog once curled up beside her on a night when she was certain no one in the world cared. She spoke not with bitterness, but with honesty. I know what it's like to be judged for what people see on the outside, Alexis said, her voice carrying through the quiet crowd. I also know how hard it is to earn trust, how long it takes, and how quickly it can be shattered. She looked at Griffin, Harmony, Jenna, and Priscilla, each watching her, awaiting her cue. These dogs saved me more than I saved them. They taught me that leadership isn't about fear or control. It's about respect, consistency, and showing up day after day, even when no one believes in you but your dogs. Then she began her demonstration. Alexis gave no treats, no harsh commands, just soft words, gestures, and the unspoken language of trust. She called the pack to heel. They responded with gentle, eager focus. She sent them to different corners of the park, recalling them one by one, each returning with quiet pride. The crowd murmured, some impressed, others incredulous. A toddler tripped and fell near Priscilla, who instinctively settled beside the child, tail wagging in silent comfort. Emily stepped forward, nerves trembling in her hands, Shadow at her side. "Can I show them?" she whispered. Alexis nodded. Emily knelt and gave a soft command. Shadow sat, tail thumping. Then, after a gentle coax, shook paws with a giggling child. Laughter rippled through the crowd. Someone called out, "How do you do it?" Another, less friendly, asked, "What happens if your dog snaps?" Alexis answered each question openly. "Nothing is guaranteed," she said. "No dog, no person is perfect. But you don't build trust with fear. You build it with time and patience and love. Every day, I choose to trust them, and they choose to trust me back." As the workshop went on, skepticism began to fade. People saw how the dogs checked in with Alexis before approaching a stranger, how they responded to her voice not because they were afraid, but because they wanted to. Dr. Wallace, who had come quietly, stood off to the side, taking notes, a small smile breaking through his professional reserve. Nancy Myers was there, arms crossed, lips pursed. She watched Alexis's every move, waiting for a mistake, a slip, something to confirm her fears. But even Nancy's frown softened a little as she watched Emily, once so shy, beam with pride as Shadow played fetch with a group of laughing kids. By the end, parents approached Alexis, asking for advice, shaking her hand, thanking her for her courage. The atmosphere had changed. A little less suspicion, a little more wonder. The shepherds basked in the attention, tails wagging, tongues lolling. As the sun dipped behind the park's oaks, Alexis felt a weight lift from her chest. Maybe not everyone had changed their minds, but something important had shifted. She'd told her story, faced her critics, and let her work speak for itself. Trust was growing, slowly, quietly, like spring grass after a long, hard winter. And Alexis, for the first time in weeks, walked home with her head high, her pack at her side, and hope blooming in her heart. It started with a teenager's phone. A snippet of video, Alexis standing in the park, her voice steady and sure as 4 German shepherds weaved gracefully around her in a perfect leashless dance. Emily was in the background, coaxing Shadow into a game of fetch with another child. Laughter bubbled up, unrehearsed and real. The clip landed on TikTok, and within hours, Willow Glen's Dog Whisperer began trending. Local news picked it up. By Sunday morning, messages flooded Alexis's inbox, some from people in town, but most from strangers across the country. "How did you do it? Can you help with my rescue? I wish my town had someone like you." For the first time in weeks, Alexis felt something besides exhaustion. She felt possibility. She'd spent years believing her story was one of survival, of quietly enduring. But suddenly, the story that had nearly broken her was reaching people she'd never met, offering them hope. She wasn't just the woman with the shepherds anymore. She was a symbol of trust, patience, and second chances. Invitations started coming in, first from the elementary school, then the local news, then a regional dog training group. Would you share your methods? Could you speak about trust? Even the local PTA reached out. Alexis, still shy by nature, found herself facing rooms full of eager faces, children, parents, and dog owners scribbling notes as she spoke about leadership, gentle authority, and the difference between control and true connection. Will grinned each time she took the stage. "You're a regular celebrity, Lex," he teased. "Better get those dogs some sunglasses." Emily, too, began to shine. With Alexis's continued mentorship, Emily grew from the shy girl at Alexis's doorstep to the confident handler of her own dog. She joined Alexis on visits to the school, teaching other children how to approach Shadow gently, how to reward bravery with patience. Her mother watched, teary-eyed and proud, as Emily explained to her classmates, "Dogs get scared, just like people. But if you're patient, they learn to trust you." That's what Alexis taught me. Meanwhile, Alexis's living room overflowed with new clients. Former critics brought their own dogs, sheepish but hopeful. "I'm sorry for what I said," more than one confessed. "I want to do better. Will you teach me?" Alexis never turned anyone away, though she did insist on one thing. You have to be willing to start over. Leave what you think you know at the door. Even Nancy Myers, after weeks of icy silence, started to walk by Alexis's house more slowly, sometimes pausing to watch the shepherds through the fence. Her hard edges softened, little by little, as she witnessed the change in town. One evening, as the sun dipped behind the town's oaks, Alexis sat on the porch with Will, sipping sweet tea. Griffin lay across her feet. Harmony, Jenna, and Priscilla sprawled out in the cool grass. The air buzzed with the sound of distant laughter and barking from a new group of dog walkers at the park. Parents and children who, inspired by Alexis's workshop, had started their own little pack walks. Will nudged Alexis's shoulder. "You see what you started?" She smiled, a blush coloring her cheeks. "I just wanted people to see what was possible if you give trust a real chance. If you lead with respect instead of fear." Will nodded. "That's what makes it powerful. You didn't change their minds by arguing. You showed them. That's why people listen." The following week, Alexis launched her own project, Pack Heart Kennels, turning her home and yard into a center for humane dog training, education, and community events. She ran group classes in the evenings, packed with people from every corner of town. Some brought rescued pit bulls and anxious mutts. Others came with pampered poodles or senior beagles, eager for a new way to connect. Alexis's approach was always the same. Build trust, go slow, celebrate every small victory. Dr. Wallace joined her as a mentor, often sharing scientific insights while Alexis demonstrated her gentle hand. The two made an unlikely team, his precise clinical language balancing her raw, honest stories. Parents watched as their kids learned not only how to train a dog, but how to listen, how to empathize, how to let go of old fears. Emily flourished under Alexis's wing, eventually volunteering as a junior trainer. She and Shadow became local celebrities themselves, visiting classrooms to help teach lessons on kindness and patience. More than once, Alexis caught Emily offering the same advice she'd once received. "It's okay to be scared. Just keep trying. Trust takes time." Nancy Myers, never one to admit defeat, sent an email to Alexis. "I may have been wrong. If you ever need help organizing another workshop, let me know." Alexis stared at the message, tears threatening. It wasn't a full apology. but it was a beginning. On a crisp Saturday morning, Alexis watched as families gathered for the first official Pack Heart Kennels open house. Children ran laughing through an agility course. Parents swapped tips on leashes and training. Dr. Wallace led a workshop on body language, while Emily demonstrated with Shadow. Nancy arrived with a box of homemade muffins and, to everyone's astonishment, spent the day volunteering, helping wrangle leashes, pouring lemonade, offering praise to nervous first-timers. By the end of the day, Alexis stood with her shepherds beneath the wide maple in her yard, overwhelmed by gratitude. The community that had once doubted her now gathered on her lawn, celebrating not just her dogs, but a new way of living together, with patience, kindness, and a little bit of faith. It wasn't perfection, and there were still setbacks and skeptics. But for the first time, Willow Glen felt like home. As dusk settled and the last guests wandered away, Alexis sat in the grass, her pack surrounding her. Emily plopped down beside her, grinning, Shadow curled at her feet. Alexis looked around, at her dogs, at her new friends, at the quiet promise of a future shaped not by suspicion, but by the courage to begin again. She had come full circle, and now, so had her town. The autumn air in Willow Glen shimmered with possibility as the annual Community Awards dinner approached, a tradition where neighbors gathered in the school gymnasium, plates of potluck and proud parents filling every corner, to celebrate those who'd given something special to the town. This year, Alexis was among those honored. It had been a long road from whispers and judgment to gratitude and acceptance, yet, as she waited backstage, her palms damp and heart hammering, Alexis felt the old anxiety flicker. What if her story was still too much for some people? What if the lesson she carried wasn't what they wanted to hear? But as she peeked out from behind the curtain, she saw familiar faces. Will, beaming encouragement. Emily and her mother, waving frantically. Dr. Wallace, notepad in hand, smiling with quiet pride. In the front row, Nancy Myers sat ramrod straight, a small, reluctant smile softening her usual severity. The gym buzzed with laughter, clinking forks, and the chatter of kids sneaking brownies under the table. When Alexis's name was announced, she walked out with Griffin at her side. Calm, regal, wearing a blue bandana embroidered with Pack Heart. Applause filled the room. Alexis hesitated only a moment before she began to speak, her voice steady but warm. "I want to thank you all for letting me be a part of this community," she began, glancing at the people who once crossed the street to avoid her pack. "It wasn't always easy. Sometimes it still isn't. But I've learned that belonging isn't about being perfect or fitting in. It's about showing up for each other, especially when it's hard." She paused, looking down at Griffin, then at Emily, who sat tall and proud beside Shadow. "My dogs have taught me more than any book or class. Real leadership isn't about dominating or demanding obedience. It's about listening, about earning trust through small, consistent choices, every single day. Most of the work you never see. It's waking up before sunrise, walking in the rain, practicing patience when you'd rather give up. It's failing again and again, and forgiving yourself, so you can try one more time." The room was silent now, everyone listening. Alexis continued, "We all make mistakes. We all judge things we don't understand. But I've learned that the quickest way to lose trust is to try to force it. The only way to build something that lasts is to let it grow, slowly, honestly, with love." Dr. Wallace raised his hand from the crowd, asking, "Would you say your methods are something anyone could use? Or is there something special about your bond?" Alexis smiled. "Anyone can do it. You don't need a special touch or secret skill. You need to be willing to be vulnerable, to admit when you're scared or confused. My bond with my dogs grew out of being broken, not out of being strong. That's where true leadership comes from, understanding pain and still choosing kindness. Emily, voice trembling with nerves but determined, stood beside Alexis. I used to be afraid of everything. I thought I wasn't good enough, and that my dog would never trust me. But Alexis taught me that trust isn't something you can take or demand. It's something you build, little by little, by being there, even when you mess up. Applause swelled, genuine and sustained. Alexis felt tears pricking at her eyes. Nancy Myers, never one for sentiment, stood and spoke, her voice surprisingly soft. We almost lost something special, because we let fear speak louder than understanding. I'm glad we listened before it was too late. Alexis nodded, searching for words to capture the deeper truth. The things that scare us, difference, change, what we don't control, are usually where our biggest lessons hide. Willow Glen almost missed out on a different way to lead, just because it was new. I hope we keep learning, together. As the dinner continued, conversations bubbled about second chances, about leadership in families and friendships, about how quickly judgment could take root and how much effort it took to pull it up by the roots. Several parents approached Alexis for advice. Others simply thanked her for making them see their neighbors and their own pets a little differently. Later, Dr. Wallace called up to the podium, publicly recognized Alexis's training as a model for humane and effective animal care. What looks like a miracle to most of us is actually the product of thousands of small, compassionate choices. Alexis's work is a reminder that real change doesn't happen all at once. It happens quietly, day after day. As the event wound down, Alexis and Emily stood together under the gym's fluorescent lights, surrounded by laughter and lingering praise. Emily squeezed her hand. "Do you think I could help other kids like you helped me?" she asked. Alexis hugged her. "You already are, Emily. Every time you show someone how to be gentle, how to wait, how to forgive, you're making the world better." On the drive home, Alexis replayed the night in her mind. She realized that the true lesson she'd learned, and hopefully passed on, wasn't about dog training at all. It was about what happened when a community stopped being afraid of what was different and started learning from it instead. As she walked her pack through the quiet, lamp-lit streets, neighbors waved and called greetings. She no longer felt the sting of suspicion. In its place was a warmth, a sense of being seen, understood, and finally accepted. Willow Glen was changing, slowly but surely, and Alexis knew she'd helped lead the way. But the credit belonged to everyone who dared to listen, to trust, and to give themselves, and each other, a second chance. Winter faded gently in Willow Glen. Soft sunlight touched the roofs of old houses. Ice retreated from the edges of sidewalks, and the community seemed to exhale as spring breathed new color into the world. Alexis stood at her kitchen window one morning, steaming mug in hand, and watched her 4 shepherds, Griffin, Harmony, Jenna, and Priscilla, lazing in the patchy backyard sunlight. Just a year ago, she'd walked the same streets with her head down, feeling every whisper and sideways glance. Now the air was filled with greetings, laughter, and a different kind of attention: trust. Packheart Kennels had become more than a name on a hand-painted sign. It was a movement. On Saturdays, families came from all over the county, dogs in tow, to join community walks and training sessions. Parents chatted over coffee while children ran obstacle courses with their pets. Alexis often watched from the edge, letting others lead. Emily, her once shy student, now stood at the front of a circle of kids, explaining how to use a gentle voice, how to let a nervous dog make the first move. Her mother looked on, beaming. Former critics, too, had changed. Nancy Myers, whose crusade had nearly driven Alexis from her home, became an unlikely advocate. She now organized monthly kindness pledges at the elementary school, teaching children and adults about empathy, respect, and giving second chances. When she spoke of the early days, she admitted her mistake. "I thought I was protecting the town. But what I learned is, sometimes the things that scare us most are the things we need to understand." Alexis and her dogs taught me that. Dog walking groups became a fixture in Willow Glen. Every evening, a parade of leashes and wagging tails snaked through the parks and side streets. Where once neighbors had eyed each other with suspicion, now they greeted each other by name, swapping stories and sharing tips. Newcomers, recently arrived families, shy teenagers, even an older man who'd once been too afraid to walk his rescue mutt, found welcome in the routine. Alexis's gentle leadership, always more invitation than command, shaped the rituals of belonging. Inside Packheart Kennels, Alexis started a special program for foster kids. She remembered all too well the ache of being an outsider, the desperate hope for someone to see and believe in her. Now she used her hard-won wisdom to teach children how to read a dog's signals, how to use patience, how to see mistakes as part of learning, not proof of failure. She shared her story with honesty, about moving from home to home, the loneliness, and the dog that changed everything for her. Each time she saw something light up in her students' eyes, recognition and relief. "You don't have to be perfect," she told them. "You just have to keep trying." Parents and teachers from all over came to watch. They saw children, once labeled difficult or troubled, relax under Alexis's guidance. The dogs taught gentleness, boundaries, and confidence in a way no lecture could. Kids who rarely spoke in class now laughed as they coaxed shy puppies out from under chairs. More than once, a parent wept quietly in the corner, seeing their child's face open with hope. At the year's biggest community event, Willow Glen Day, Alexis was asked to give the keynote address. Standing on the makeshift stage in the town square, she looked out at the faces before her. Emily and her mother, Will, Dr. Wallace, Nancy, and dozens of others, friends, families, skeptics turned supporters, and strangers drawn by stories of trust and transformation. She spoke not as a hero, but as someone who had once felt small and lost. "We all long to belong," she said, her voice steady but full of emotion. "Sometimes, the things that set us apart, the things that made me and my dogs outsiders, become the things that unite us. When we lead with trust and openness, we build communities where everyone feels safe to be themselves, where we don't just tolerate differences, but celebrate them." She paused, scanning the crowd. True connection is earned, never forced. What we nurture with patience, we protect with love. My dogs taught me that every day is a chance to begin again, to forgive, to try, to grow. And if you want to change the world, start by trusting it a little more. As she finished, the crowd rose in applause. Some wiped tears from their cheeks. Others smiled, already planning their next visit to Packheart or their next neighborhood walk. Alexis stepped down into the throng, hugged by old friends and new, her pack close by, accepting pats and ear scratches from a dozen hands. That afternoon, Alexis led one last walk through town as the sun slipped low. The shepherds moved at her side, heads high, children running ahead, neighbors falling into step behind. She watched as Emily took the lead with Shadow, helping a little boy who'd never touched a dog before stroke the pup's soft fur. Nancy carried treats in her pockets, offering encouragement and advice to the stragglers. As they wound their way home, Alexis felt the weight of the past. Fear, suspicion, loneliness finally melt away. She understood now that the truest kind of leadership wasn't about being in charge. It was about showing up again and again, even when the world doubts you. It was about giving second chances to others and to yourself. Standing on her porch at dusk, Alexis looked out at Willow Glen. She saw a community transformed, not by perfection, but by patience and courage. Her pack, once a symbol of controversy, had become a banner for hope and belonging. Her final thought, as she watched the last light linger on the rooftops: sometimes, the things that scare us most are exactly what we need to learn. The bravest thing we can do is to give trust, and to give others and ourselves a second chance.